Most days I would play at the card table despite people telling me not to gamble. I wanted to see what it was about. Probably 90% of the altercations come from gambling, and I have some good stories about gambling specifically in prison for my second time I was there. I'll eventually tell those too, but my first time gambling, I was aware that it could possibly lead to something, but I knew how to play cards. I had Canteen, so what could go wrong? There was only 3 people or maybe 4 people that had a full deck of cards in the whole unit. You had to order decks of cards on Canteen, which I eventually did, but that was much later. One older Italian guy had a deck of cards, but he had the deck marked. Can you spot the difference between this card on this card? I don't know if you can see that or not. But basically, this is the exact card, like how he had it marked. It's not a very good job, as you can see clearly. The 2 opposite corners aren't rounded, but rather squared off. All the aces had 2 opposing corners, squared off. Kings had 2 corners on the same side. Queens were 2 corners on the top and bottom. I didn't play with him long enough to figure out what marks he had on the other cards. It would have probably cost me a lot of money playing with him and trying to figure out what marks he had on each card. It wasn't like I could go like, hey Enzo, let me get your deck of cards so I can go through them. This other big black dude had the best deck of cards. He kept it in perfect condition, but he had 2 people that he always played with, and they would always signal each other. Other people had to have noticed this, I would think. It would be something like hearts, like for this, or they'd have their hands on the table for diamonds or clubs, spades would be like this, like they'd cup their hands. Sometimes if the game was poker, one of these guys would always dump all his chips to the big black dude. It'd be so obvious too, he'd be raising every street, showing aggression, then he'd fold on the river when it was just him and the big black guy. One time he did this, and when he folded, he threw his cards into the discard pile with all the other cards, but it was my deal next, and I tracked his 2 cards while shuffling and saw he had Jack 6 offsuit. If you're unfamiliar with poker, nobody's raising pre-flop, flop, and then turn with Jack 6, and then just folding with almost all your chips in the middle. The other guy who had a deck was this old guy.